should we be worried about the evil eye?
The answer to the question in short is yes and no. There's certainly such a thing as an ayin hara, an ayin ra, and an ayin toiv. It's even brought in Hasidus that it's a personality. An evil eye is not just that you look at a person with a bad eye. Some people just have bad eyes. They just, in Yiddish you would say zefarginenish. Whatever they look at, their eyes have such a jealousy. And the eyes, you don't mean the eye, you mean the spirit of that person, that they just bring a negative energy over whatever they examine and look at. And then you have an ayin toiva, who whatever he looks at with a good eye, with a generous eye, when he sees your successes, he's happy for you and it blesses you. So the concept of ayin ra and ayin toiv are certainly real. And the same is true with all kinds of other spiritual energies. Torah has a very, very broad appreciation for all the various different kinds of energies. But there's a very, very critical point that needs to be added. And that is, not everybody has to worry about everything. What that means is, to be very direct, the Rebbe never worried about ayin hara. The Rebbe always said, just like the Rebbe said, ignore a dream, it's nonsense. The Rebbe would say, don't worry about a bad eye. Just don't worry about these things. And there are many, many different issues that people would bring to the Rebbe's attention, and the Rebbe would say, leave it alone. What's interesting is, when you hear stories about tzaddikim, for example, the Alter Rebbe's parents were made to move from the city of Liozne, which wasn't a very large city, to the city of Lubavitch, because Lubavitch was barely populated, it was tiny. Because the Baal Shem Tov himself was concerned about ayin hara. Baal Shem Tov was concerned that if the wrong persons would see the Alter Rebbe and recognize how extraordinary he is, they could put an evil eye on the Alter Rebbe. So the Baal Shem Tov was concerned with an ayin hara. And of course the answer is, he was concerned with an ayin hara about the Alter Rebbe. But for you and for me, since we're not that great, the good and the evil is much less sensitive and refined, and the Rebbe always would tell people not to worry about such things. And the Rebbe would often say, as the Gemara says about dreams, that concerning yourself with it is more of a problem than the actual event itself. Leave it alone. Don't worry about it. And I'm going to give you an interesting example. There's a phenomenon in Shas called zugis. Zugis means you're not supposed to do things in pairs. 2, 4, 6, supposed to do things in odd numbers. It's a sugya masech. The Pesachim gets very, very involved. And there are all kinds of, there's stories and there's complications about when zugis is an issue. Nobody worries about zugis. Nobody really concerns themselves with the idea of doing things in pairs. There was a very, very, very famous tzaddik from the last generation, whose name was Aaron Rekech, the Belzerov, who was a very, very big tzaddik, who was incredibly concerned with zugis. He was very, very afraid of doing things in pairs. He was very particular about it. And there are many stories that the Belzer Hasidim tell you about his concern with the zugis. I read a story, just as an example. He almost never went to the mikveh later in life. You know, like the Chassidim said about the Rebbe Marash, the mikveh daf emer v'er the mikveh. The mikveh needs him more than he needs the mikveh. The Heilige Belzerov, his father told him that he shouldn't go to the mikveh. He doesn't need the mikveh. He would go up to the water and he would say, I'm being Makayim mitzvahs kibbadav, and he would leave. But the Belzerov, on the rare occasion that he toiveled, would toivel 6 times. That was his minig. And as he was leaving the water, he would slap his leg against the water and say, this is 7. And the reason for that was to avoid zugis. The point is, a tzaddik of that magnitude, of a neshama on that level, all of these spiritual energies are real. So they have to concern themselves with them. For anoshim kerkeinu, for simple people, concerning ourselves with these issues is really without a context. We're not that spiritual, not that sensitive. We don't live such spiritual and sensitive lives. And as a consequence, these things shouldn't worry us. And oftentimes the biggest problem of all of these issues is the worry itself.